morning. It is the beginning of day 3. I'm still going to head south today. There's a few more national battlefield parks that I'm going to visit. It's kind of a chilly night last night, but I was warm in my sleeping bag. Cold breakfast this morning, just bagel, yogurt, banana, and some milk. It's about 7:20 in the morning. I'm all packed up and ready to go. It's going to be a fairly long day only because I've got 3 stops planned, and then interspersed between all that is a couple hundred miles of travel. So it should be a long day, but the weather's supposed to be good. It's only going to get up to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit today. So I've got all my gear on. I'll put my heated vest plugged in and my heated grips on. So I should be comfortable riding while it works its way up out of the 40s into the 50s, and then hopefully reaches 60 degrees Fahrenheit sometime 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. All right, here we go, beginning of day 3. Harpers Ferry National Park.
I rode the bus in from the National Park office, and here I am in the lower section of Harpers Ferry. So of course Harpers Ferry is known for 2 things. It's known for John Brown and the insurrection that he started before the Civil War down here, where federal troops were sent in to suppress it. And second was that during the war, the Federals held this area, and General Lee sent Confederates against them in 1862 while he made his way north up to Antietam, which we visited yesterday. This is known as John Brown's Fort. He and his 21 insurrectionists. John Brown started his famous raid on October 16, 1859, and he held it for 36 hours until the U.S. Marines came and killed a number of them and actually captured John Brown, who was later hanged for insurrection. So this is an important building in American history. Harpers Ferry sits at the confluence of the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers. This is where I parked my motorcycle, and then the bus took me in to the lower town. There's John Brown's Fort. And interestingly, the Appalachian Trail cuts through here and crosses the C&O Canal towpath. So there's a bridge here that you can take. Maybe I'll take a quick walk across it. This kind of shows where I am on the eastern side of the United States. So here is the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal, and then the Appalachian Trail, which starts down in Georgia and goes all the way up to Maine. But they cross right here, which is where I am. I started up here in Connecticut. We're halfway almost between Georgia's starting spot of the Appalachian Trail and the terminus up in Maine. This is one of these places that I've always read about in American history books, and it's my first visit here. It's just the way I read about it. It's a very cool place.
So the original John Brown's Fort stood here at this obelisk. You can see where it was moved to in 1892 because of the railroad. I did not realize that Meriwether Lewis used Harpers Ferry in order to basically outfit himself with the equipment he needed to go west after he met with President Jefferson in Washington, D.C., which is to the east of here. This is a museum dedicated to John Brown and the insurrection that he caused.
The raid's first victim is a former slave.
These are remnants of the scaffold used to hang John Brown after his trial. Apparently they sent in 1,500 federal troops to make sure that they could do the execution without interference. This is the door to the entrance to the prison that held John Brown.
These stone steps are part of the Appalachian Trail that runs right through Harpers Ferry. So that was Harpers Ferry. I may try to ride over to Boulevard Hill where 5 battles took place. But then I need to start heading south to Chancellorsville. I've got a pretty long ride to get down there, probably 3 hours. And so time's a-wasting. So I gotta wait for the bus here that runs every 10 minutes and then back to my bike. This gives a pretty good overview of the town. So you can see the bridge that I crossed down there where the canal is, John Brown's Fort, historic town with some historic shops that you can walk through and museums, and then I'm over here now close to the bus stop. So this is Boulevard Heights, where a number of battles took place, and it overlooks Harpers Ferry, the town. So we'll just take a quick stop here. The town of Harpers Ferry is in that direction. Shenandoah River is down there. You can see the valley. Blue Ridge Mountain is behind it. And the Union forces in 1862, in September of 1862, while Lee was heading north, Stonewall Jackson attacked the Northern Army here. And so the Northern Army was trying to protect Harpers Ferry from the Confederates. So they would have been in that direction. The Confederates would be in the direction I'm coming from. And after several days of battle, the largest surrender of Union forces to occur in the Civil War took place here on Boulevard Heights. And then Stonewall Jackson, I believe, took his troops north to help Lee out up at Antietam. Stonewall Jackson captured 73 cannon, 13,000 small arms, 200 wagons, and 12,500 Northern prisoners. Largest surrender of U.S. forces until Bataan during World War II. See the railroad bridge there, way off in the distance in the valley, crossing the river. So that's where I was. Commanding view of the town. And that's off in the distance. All right, so onto my bike, and we're heading south about 70 miles. Should take a couple hours of riding. So I did an unplanned stop in the Battle of the Wilderness, May 5th to the 6th, 1864. But this area is just peppered with battlefields. This is where I'm actually headed, is Chancellorsville, which was a year earlier, April 27th to May 6th, 1863. Salem Church, 1863, and then the famous Battle of Fredericksburg in 1862. And then, of course, there's the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse, May 8th through the 21st, 1864. So you can see that there's 3 different years of battles that are included in this little section of Virginia. It was called the Battle of the Wilderness because loggers had cut and recut the forest here. And the armies ended up in this impenetrable mix of what they describe as deadfall, brush, and reemergent growth. So you could only see a few feet in front of you, and the 2 armies just kind of stumbled into one another, and it's apparently a terrible fight that took place. And then the woods caught fire and then burned to death, and bodies were scattered everywhere. This is the Chancellorsville Battlefield Visitor Center. It was a 6-day battle, April 1863, where the Northern Army was basically outmaneuvered by Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. Joe Hooker was at that time, the general in charge of the Army of the Potomac, the Northern Army. One of the big outcomes of it was that General Lee lost Stonewall Jackson to death when he got shot, I believe, by his own soldiers in the dark. So this monument was erected in 1888. 5,000 people attended the dedication of the obelisk, the monument for Stonewall Jackson. And he didn't die immediately. He was shot. He died eight days later, but he was shot right in this area. And there's apparently a stone around the corner here. Somebody said about him, there is Jackson standing like a stone wall. And that name stuck with him, I think, for the rest of the war. And apparently this stone, the boulder, was brought here between 1876 and 1885 to mark the site of Jackson's wounding.
Hardtack on the left and 6th Corps hat on the right. An actual map used by Stonewall Jackson with his handwritten notes. This is a swatch of uniform from Stonewall Jackson on a lock of his hair. This is an example of an artillery ball that went into a tree and was saved as a souvenir.
I am back on the motorcycle and I am headed down Bullock Road to take the tour of the battlefield here at Chancellorsville. Chancellorsville was not actually a village. It was a single home owned by somebody with the name Chancellor, and it was a very large home, and we are going to stop there next. I think the house got burned down during the battle, so I'm not sure what's left, if anything, even in the foundation, but we'll see. Just by way of comparison, Confederates took 13,000 casualties, and the Union took 17,000 casualties here at Chancellorsville. On the morning of May 3rd, 1863, more than 17,500 men were killed or wounded in the woods and fields around you. One man shot every second for 5 hours. There's a painting of what the house looked like. There's a photograph of what it looked like after the fire. This is what it looks like today. Big house. Hence the name of one of the most famous battles in the American Civil War, Chancellorsville. General Jackson decided, along with General Lee, that he was going to flank the Union Army. And so he left here after a meeting on May 2nd to do that. And he was successful in doing that. But this was the last place in which Stonewall Jackson and General Lee met, because shortly thereafter Stonewall Jackson got shot. So this is the Union Center that eventually got pushed back by the Virginians, the Confederate Army. In any event, I think that's it for Chancellorsville. I'm running past 3:40 in the afternoon, and I still have another 45 minutes of riding, and then I got to get something for dinner. Arrived at Lake Anna State Park down here in Virginia. A few people around, but not many. And it's cool out. It's like 62 degrees. So I've got to check the weather and see what it's going to be like tonight. But hopefully it's going to warm up here in the next couple days. I picked up groceries on the way in, and you can see my bag under the netting there. That's my dinner and breakfast for tomorrow. I probably talked about it before, but that 20-liter bag, roll top, that I just keep in my top case. It's just great for groceries. I throw my groceries in there, roll it up, throw the netting over it, and within literally a minute to two, I've got my groceries all stacked away for whatever ride it is to get into camp. Here we go, dinner, day 3. Some sushi, banana, some sweet tea, some type of black and white cake of some sort for dessert, with a little bit of milk. I just checked on the weather report for the next few days, and apparently on Sunday, I believe it is, there's a big warm-up where it's going to go from where it is right now in the low 60s up to the upper 80s Fahrenheit. So it's going to be quite a change. We'll see how my gear handles that. Hey, good morning. It's day 4, and I'm about an hour north of Richmond, where I'm going today. There's a museum in downtown Richmond that I plan on visiting before I head further south. So a little chilly last night, but again, the gear's holding up pretty well. Thought I'd show you the new motorcycle outfit that I bought before this trip. My other gear was probably 20 years old, so it was time for an upgrade. So I bought an MSR pants and jacket from an outfit out in Colorado, Rocky Mountain ATV motorcycle. And this is an MSR branded gear. It's waterproof, unlike my other stuff, so I don't no longer carry with me waterproof cover. And then I also splurged, I call it a splurge, although I think it's pretty important at the end of the day, a Helite vest, which is an inflatable vest, which goes over my motorcycle gear and physically attaches to my motorcycle. So it attaches with a little tether, and it's got an inflation cartridge here, which provides back, shoulder, and chest protection. So it's new gear for 2024. Bought it all on my own, certainly no sponsor, unfortunately. And so far it seems to be working very well. The weather's been cool, and like I've mentioned the last few days, but the weather is supposed to warm up dramatically on, I believe it's Sunday. We're supposed to get up into the upper 80s. So we'll test whether this gear is actually cool enough to wear in those temperatures or not. Right now I've got layered up underneath it several layers, including my heated motorcycle jacket. And it's working great. Now when the temperatures get up into the upper 80s Fahrenheit, low 90s, we'll see whether it's going to be too warm or not. But they did provide vents at the sleeves, at the shoulders. It's going to be covered up, unfortunately, but there's a couple of vents here on the chest, and then some exhaust vents in the back. So and then there's some venting in the pants as well. But we'll see how it goes, whether this outfit is comfortable or not in the really warm temperatures, but it's certainly very comfortable in the cool temperatures. And with the new vest that I bought, there's a CE level 2 armored back plate in it, which actually is very comfortable when I'm sitting on the bike or walking around. It doesn't really cause any concerns. I did upgrade the armor in here. There's elbow, shoulder, knees, hip armor from CE level 1 to CE level 2. So I'm going to sell my CE level 1 stuff that came with this gear probably on eBay or whatever and get rid of it. But basically the CE level 2 gives twice the protection, and again it's super comfortable, so really happy with everything, the way that it has worked out. In any event, I'm ready to get on the bike. The camp's all packed up, and I've got about an hour and a half ride down into Richmond, Virginia. So hopefully you'll join me today.
All right, so I'm ready to go. I cleaned and lubed the chain yesterday, so it's all ready to go. You can see another use for that bungee strap. The netting is going to haul my trash out to the front. All these state parks, or most of them, have moved all their dumpsters up to one central location at the opening of the park, which is good for an automobile, but it's a pain in the neck trying to carry trash out on a motorcycle. But in any event, this will makes it really quick and easy. And just one more thing, or two more things before I get on the bike. You'll notice here's the strap that attaches to my vest. It's tied into the frame, and so I put that on when I get on the bike. And then I've got the wiring for my heated jacket here as well, so I have to hook those two in once I get on the bike. Pretty quick and easy to take it on and pull it off. Just have to remember it, which after doing it several times becomes fairly routine. So here we go to Richmond. All right, I've arrived downtown Richmond.
nothing about this medical museum. So I'm going to visit there, pick up hopefully a brochure. There's a whole bunch of things in the Richmond area, of course, related to the Civil War that I'm going to visit. And this is stop number 1. So on this plateau, 40 acres of Civil War military hospitals were built by the Confederacy. 78,000 sick and wounded Confederate soldiers were serviced in this area. The original buildings don't stand anymore. But this one was built in 1909 as a weather station and turned into a museum. That is a tourniquet from the Civil War.
Gave some of its supplies to some of the patients in the hospital.
That is a bullet probe.
He did so.
And this is a bullet extractor. And that's the typical 58 caliber mini ball that was used in the Civil War. So that's an example of the tourniquet there on the left being applied to the upper leg, and then a saw being used to cut the lower leg. Apparently it's reproduction.
And so forth. It was very difficult for them to get manufactured medications. And
The yellow flag was symbolic of a hospital back during the Civil War period. So I'm here right outside the Chimborazo Medical Museum in downtown Richmond, and I'm going to head up to here where is the Cold Harbor Visitor Center. But so much activity took place during the Civil War surrounding Richmond, since it was the capital of the Confederacy and a target for the Northern Army. There's all kinds of places to see here. There's National Parks of Richmond, site of the Tredegar Iron Works. There is, as part of that, the cemetery that a number of important people from the South were buried at, including President Jefferson Davis. It's called the Hollywood Cemetery. I don't know that I'm going to have time to go over there. There's Chickahominy Bluffs, Beaver Dam Creek, Gaines Mill. I may stop there as well. But just to give you some perspective on all the different historical things to see around the Richmond area. Ready to ride. Looks like it's 20 minutes over. So here we are at Cold Harbor. Battle started June 3rd, 1864. Ran until June 12th. There were 13,000 Federal casualties, 5,000 Confederate casualties. And the end of the result was that the Union troops withdrew. And I'm standing, you can see right here, and up here is where the battlefield would have taken place. So these are the battles of what are known as the Overland Campaign. There's the Wilderness at the top left, where I was yesterday. 30,000 casualties starting on May 5th. Goes through Spotsylvania, which I didn't visit yesterday because of a GPS error. North Anna River, Totopotomoy Creek, and then here we are in Cold Harbor, May 31st. So basically a month and a half of campaigning that took place by Grant as he continued to push his way south until he got to Petersburg, June 15th through the 18th, which is near the end of the war. At the time, I'm going to do this 1 mile walk. It's about 45 minutes. It's a loop that shows the progression of the battle over the course of the couple of weeks. This is the Confederate main line. 14 assaults from the east. Federals lost 7,000 casualties. So here's looking back at the visitor center and the couple cannon that are there to the left. I can just imagine the nerves of steel it must have taken to walk across an open field like this. There was one statement that said that the Federals were okay until they got within about 80 yards of the Confederate lines, at which time the Confederates opened fire with ball and canister and just tore the men to shreds. Because there's basically no cover. Must have been horrible. This shallow depression here in the ground, you can barely see it. It's called a zigzag. It's constructed in June 1864, what's left of it. And it's basically trench warfare that was used at the time. And it gave them some protection from the Confederate sharpshooters. Now, of course, we're back where the Federals were. Just barely visible. Hopefully it gets picked up on the camera. Looking down that way. Yeah, it's a little more visible here. And back there you can see the remains of earthworks. Basically small hills working their way back for the Federals. They're all covered with leaves with a little bit of greenage on it. I've heard it described that General Grant, who succeeded several unsuccessful Union generals before him, basically understood the math. And the math was that the northern armies were better supplied, had more men and material to go at the Confederates than the Confederates had. And so the overland campaign was a great example of that, where he just kept pounding against Lee's troops. And if he was unsuccessful, instead of retreating, in this case, he would continue to try to encircle them or move around their flanks. And this is a Federal gun pit. A battlefield like Cold Harbor takes a little bit more imagination than, let's say, Gettysburg, where I don't think any of these woods were here back then. So you can't see the opposing lines and kind of what the men were facing. You have to imagine it just a little bit. Apparently a truce was called on June 7th. After 100 hours of fighting over the previous few days, there was a truce called for 2 hours so that wounded could be removed from the field. And at least in one sector there were 244 Union dead and only 3 survivors that were found. When I sit here on a battlefield like this, I think to myself, how many mini balls are laying in that field out there for the thousands, tens of thousands of rounds that were fired? This is the trail I'm taking, the blue trail, so that's the ranger station. Worked my way past this field, up and around. I'm sitting here right now. And apparently there's quite a bit of things to see here in the back. There are other trails. They're a little bit longer, but I'm fine doing this one. This little creek is known as Bloody Run as a result of the hand-to-hand combat that was occurring here. And again, none of this was filled with trees, but up there you can perhaps see is a hill that the Confederates held, which looked down over this relatively open space and provided them with really a superior position in which to defend against the attacks from the Union Army. So they were successful ultimately in repelling the Union Army, and it withdrew from the engagement and moved around to the left and further south. This perhaps gives a sense of the elevation of the Confederate position. Looking down the trail I just walked up. So the method of warfare evolved over the course of the Civil War. In the first early stages of the war, it was men massing out in open fields and going at one another. And there were huge casualties given the capabilities of the rifles back then. So things evolved over a couple of years and it started to become a little bit more like trench warfare. And here's a good example of some earthworks by the Confederates. A little bit more like what it evolved into eventually in World War I. Here's looking in the other direction up the hill. Really deep trench work. Apparently they put a log at the top that was slightly elevated off of the top of the earthwork, in which they could put their rifles underneath, the barrels underneath, to shoot down on the Union soldiers. This is a really good example here of an entrenchment overlooking the field, and obviously the entrenchment is elevated above the field, so it gave the Confederates a huge advantage in this battle. 18,000 casualties over the course of the couple weeks. Short circle road that goes through the military park. take before I go over to Gaines Mill, which is another battle site that's actually a mile or two away. Over 7 miles of earthworks here at Cold Harbor. Apparently Cold Harbor has the largest remains of Civil War earthworks in any of the battlefields. Gaines Mill Battlefield, still part of the Richmond National Battlefield Park. So downtown Richmond, the headquarters there controls a bunch of different battlefields around the Richmond area. So this area of Virginia is just thick with battlefields. Now you got to rewind 2 years before Cold Harbor, where I just was, and this is literally a mile down the road. And this is part of the Peninsula Campaign, Gaines Mill, June 27th, 1862. And you can see all the units involved. Blue represents the Union, the red represents the Confederacy. This farmhouse is in the battle in 1862. It's a plantation of 28 slaves. It's kind of interesting, the house is still a private residence. So at this point in the war, 1862, McClellan was the general in charge of the armies, and he decided that he wanted to go after Richmond to end the Civil War early, and came up the peninsula south of Washington, D.C. But Lee's leadership just completely decimated and outmaneuvered McClellan's army of the Potomac. So it was a huge loss for the Union. I came across a volunteer at Cold Harbor who was painting one of the cannon and struck up a conversation with him. These are all authentic cannons, although it's not clear where they served because they were all put in a warehouse after the war and then eventually distributed out for parks like this. This one's dated 1863, 1,237 pounds. What was kind of interesting is that the original carriages were wood, of course, but they deteriorate so quickly in the weather that the Park Service has been replacing or has replaced all the carriages with aluminum carriages. There's apparently a specialty company that will produce a replica of a Civil War carriage, but they last a lot longer. They still require some paint, as obviously these all have paint on them. But in any event, I thought that was kind of interesting. He was painting the wheels and the hubs. So here's the peninsula that McClellan came up and then tried to attack Richmond. This is the result of it, is that he basically kept getting pushed back by Lee in the 7 days battle all the way down to Helmand Hill, where he eventually withdrew. But we're up here at Gaines Mill. Alright, I'm headed about 30 minutes south of here to Fort Harrison. It's south of Richmond. Really don't know much about it, but it's kind of a spur of the moment. It's a little bit on the way to my campground. I've got some extra time, so why not? Fort Harrison. So as you recall from that earlier diagram, Grant would, when he bumped up against Lee and couldn't succeed, continued moving to his left and south, and eventually worked his way down towards Petersburg. And there, Lee had to protect both Richmond and Petersburg, which he didn't really have the troops to be able to do, so put Lee under a tremendous amount of pressure. But you can see we're here now, southeast of Richmond. Petersburg is down there. This is in September of 1864. So I'm all the way up here at Fort Gilmore, Fort Gregg, Fort Johnson, and we're going to go down to Fort Harrison, where there's the visitor center. This road is just one long entrenchment. Still have another mile and 2 intense to go to my destination. They built these in 1862 and 1863, a couple of years before they actually needed them, using slave labor, no less. Fort Harrison Visitor Center. It's kind of interesting. Confederates had one name for it, and the Federals had another name. Harrison versus Burnham. Wonder why that is. Let's take a quick peek inside here. And then I'm heading to camp. Well, there's the answer. 1862. The construction was supervised by William E. Harrison, who died in Northern Virginia in 1873, long after the war. But when the Union attacked, Maine native Hiram Burnham, Brigadier General, survived many of Virginia's great battles before being killed while leading his brigade in the attack on Fort Harrison. Union officers renamed the captured fort in his honor. Picture Union soldiers inside of Fort Harrison, October 1864. This is what it looks like today. Alright, well, I think that does it for today. I found myself a grocery store and a campsite. Twin Lakes State Park. It's a rather cramped little campground. At least it's a place to hang out for tonight. The last campsite left. It's a Friday. It's warm down here in Virginia, so people are out camping. Got strip steak and corn with some cornbread and carrot cake for dessert, bananas.